Today I'm going to be working a horse called Mr. Jackson. He's not mine, he's one of my clients' horses, and she lives really local to me. She's actually in New Zealand, so I've offered and said, listen, I would love to work him. A couple of things he's struggling with, which is a contact issue, but also his canter is quite weak. It's not 3 beat. So I do treat him. However, we've put it down to many factors, but one of them being conformation, which I'll talk you through, but also the fact that he's been weak and he's had a lot of changes happening as he's developed and grown. So luckily this owner is awesome and she's not pushed him. She's not been someone who's like, he has to go and jump, he has to go and compete. She's given him the time. So I'm going to walk you through some of the exercises that I'm going to do and that I would recommend doing for him. Now please note, this is not generic advice, this is specific to this horse, but I'm going to share this case study with you to just give you some insight into my thought processes and also what I prescribe and what I'm doing, because I like to practice what I preach. So first of all, we've got a few things to do. Number one is I need to change, because I don't know if you can see this, but I'm in my gym gear. Went to the gym, burst water pipe, so I'm now back in the car. Gives me an extra hour to be here with the horses, and I'm going to get changed, so I'm going to see you in a minute. First things first, we need to skip out. I'm obviously never expecting just to be able to work with horses and not do the real, you finish the word, shit, which basically means clearing out all this. So it's not the whole thing, it's actually just skipping out the droppings, and then I'll go and collect the boys. So let's get to work. Something so therapeutic about mucking out, and I think fundamentally it's because you're always reminded that, you know, it brings you back to the basics and the fundamentals of set your foundations and then build on that. And there's something that's so simple about the act of mucking out, of like, every day you have to restart, you do the same job, do the same thing, but in doing so, you reset yourself for the day. Yeah, let me know if that resonates with you. Mucking out is done. It's time to go and collect Mr. Jackson, or his name's Jackson. By golly, Mr. Jackson, let's just take a moment and observe the work. Pristine. Mr. Jackson! Come on, gorgeous! I know, if I was to walk along here in a few hours' time and call their name, he would come rushing up to me. But because it's only midday, he's like, I've got 5 more hours out in this, so why would I come to you? Both ears are locked on. Hello, lovely. Hey. Hey, gorgeous man. Hi. Hey. Okay, so the little story about Mr. Jackson is his owner has had him since he was probably around like 3 years old. Is that right? Or probably younger too. And he had very straight front legs until she noticed that something happened in the field where he went a little bit asymmetric in front. And when I show you his legs, you'll see what I mean. Now they've improved a lot. We've done a lot of work with the farrier. A lot of work. We've also been to the vet, ruled out any pain. We've been given the clear. And he's had a period of no shoes and then back in shoes. When he had no shoes on, his feet went extremely pigeon-toed, and to the point of him being very uncomfortable. So after doing some x-rays and speaking to the vet and having a good farrier, he's now back in some shoes, some corrective shoeing. So this obviously affects his entire body. and which is why we don't push him too much, but we're also developing his strength, because the shoulder girdle is very much reliant on muscles as opposed to bones. The attachment of the limbs onto the spine is through muscle. If you want to know more about that, visit my I've done a video going into the anatomy of the shoulder girdle and just giving you a deep explanation as to the anatomy, its function, its form. And if you have a horse that's intermittently lame in front and it's got nothing wrong with its fetlocks and carpus, look at the shoulder girdle. Just heard this horse galloping down behind me, and it was Mr. D. So Mr. D is currently not in work. We're going to do some laser on him very soon, but you can tell he's very attached to Mr. Jackson. Look at him watching, and he'll probably come in the barn in a second as well. So first thing I always do is check limbs and just check his feet, make sure there is no, first of all he's got his shoes on, but no bumps, lumps or cuts. So how I start is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to see how he's doing. I'm going to do some checks on his body, I'm going to check his flexion, things like that. I'm going to not use treats with him because he gets a bit like nippy and doesn't bite you, but he licks, and so I don't want to reward that behavior. So we're going to start with that, and then I'm going to just see how he is today, check in with him, see how he feels, and then if I'm feeling like he's moving well both sides, I'm going to progress to riding. I've got my tack here as well. So I don't know if you saw that, but there was a real difference with the right shoulder in terms of its movement away from the body and the left hind in terms of flexion. So I'm just going to do some movement in here. This is the fun bit about groundwork. It's just play with it, be explorative, if that's a word. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do right now, just to see if I can free up those areas naturally without really focusing on them. I'm just going to do things on both sides, some movements, and then let's see what he's like afterwards if we do the same tests. Okay, so with this exercise, the key here is not to put too much pressure on yourself. I just introduce the stick because I want every horse to understand that the stick is just an extension of my arm, and I'm simply just going to walk him around in a circle around me. I'm using the stick, as I've mentioned, to extend my arm, and it's just to kind of stay out away from me. That's his encouragement. You can see there's no pressure on the rope, it's all relaxed. And I'm honestly just observing how he's walking around me. I'm looking at the shoulder girdle. I'm going to see how he changes the rein. Does he fall in on the shoulder? Does he fall out? Just start to ask questions like that. I can already see, I noticed a difference when he changed rein from that right rein onto the left rein, and I can also see that he's loading through the shoulder girdle very differently, left rein to right rein as well. Now, is it because of that connection that we found a little bit earlier during the assessment with the right shoulder and the left hind? I can see that he finds the right rein a little bit easier through the shoulder girdle, but interestingly, the left hind is shorter in its what we call track up phase. So right now I'm just going to give him a little reward. I'm just going to relax, take the pressure off, and just give him a little scratch. It's so important when we ask these pressures and questions just to take a minute and stop. And I'm going to ask him just to take a few steps of rein back. This is just to see what he's doing through his spine. What's he doing through his back? Is he taking diagonal pairs backwards? Yes, he is. What I would say though is there's a little bit of a blockage through the mid-thoracic spine. So the biggest thing I found there was that when he changed directions going from the left lead to the right lead, he was higher and shorter in the right shoulder's range, so stride length compared to the left. And I also noticed that he wasn't as happy to stabilize himself on the right rein. The left hind looked short. So if you did miss all that, don't worry, it's again subjective assessment. This is the thing about horses, but that's definitely what I saw. So I'm going to now put some exercises down to see if I can improve this naturally again, just through some little corrective exercises. And the first one is going to be with a cone. So same principle, we're going to walk around the cone. By the way, I apologize for the noise, the change. It's just me using my earphones. In future, I'll get a mic so that I can actually talk to you as I'm doing the exercise. We learn, right? I'm new to this. So the cone is just a reference point. It almost encourages him to step around it. So it encourages him to almost open up his shoulder girdle more and his pelvic girdle as well. Again, I give him a reward after every question I ask so that he has time to process, and I also have time just to slow down. It's not a rush. Remember, we are just exploring and we are just getting to know each other, and for me to understand exactly what is going on in his body the best I can. So we're going to change direction. We're now onto that left rein, and he automatically offers me more of a bend. Now, you could say this is a false bend. I'm not going to put judgment with it. I'm just observing. I can see here that there's definitely more like flexion, lateral movement through the neck, and the right shoulder to me still looks a little bit tight. It still looks a little bit restricted compared to the left one. And again, now I'm just going to reward him and just say, well done. Everything you do when you're doing your groundwork with your horses, and even your riding, just take time to stop, assess, and then start again. There's this question that is called ask, assess, and adjust. I'm now going to just shorten the pressure a little bit more and ask him to take almost shorter steps. The point being to see if I can get a little bit more opening of that there. That right shoulder opened up nicely for me. Sorry, that was the left shoulder. Took a lovely step outwards now. Look again. Now, that's great. I'm going to stop, reward, release the pressure. Okay, so you've seen the exercise. Now let's just go and do that simple range of motion test again and just see where he's at. Don't know if you saw the difference, but that felt so good, so different. So I'm actually going to progress to seeing what he feels like ridden, And I'm gonna go without the saddle because I really want to see if what I'm feeling is due to the saddle, or is it just due to potentially me, or is it just due to both of us? So this was interesting. I obviously took off the halter and went to put the bridle on. Now I always offer the bit to them and see if they accept the bit. If he said no, I wouldn't put the bit on. You can tell there he opens his mouth lovely. Something interesting happens here. Wait for it now. See that jerk? And that I reacted to straight away because I thought, what happened? And the more I started to look at the bridle, the fit, I started to ask myself questions. Why did he act like that? And again, no punishment, just me asking now, here. You can tell it's that right ear. So I did a lot of investigating, a lot of checking if the brow band wasn't too tight. He's got a little bit of what we call grass glands. So I just a little bit of acupressure point just behind the ear. And you can tell I'm just holding my finger there. I'm doing a specific technique. Obviously, I'm a chiropractor and massage therapist myself, so I do know what I'm doing. Been trained to do this. And then I reassess again, just checking if now that pain reaction is gone, and it's gone. Look at the release in his mouth. There you go. I also just checked that the cheek pieces were level. And then before I did anything else, and in terms of before I did the bridle up, anything like that, I just made sure that there was no other reaction, made sure it's nice and spacious and that there's no pressure points. Right, we're on. We're bareback. There's a new saddle. I've got my neck strap because I just freaking love my neck strap. Almost swore then. And I'm just going to walk him around. Obviously, we've not got far to go. But I am going to check in and see how he's feeling. Actually, not from my contact first. So I'm going to ignore my reins, hold on to my neck strap with my finger. This is just more for me, my balance. And I'm just going to feel underneath my seat bones. So I am going to really check in. I'm going to change the rein and just see what I'm feeling, because sometimes it can be my hips that are stiff as opposed to him, which can then affect his contact because I'm holding myself stiffer. So I'm going to pop this camera on the side. Okay, we are on, walking around, marching. And again, I will make sure that I have a microphone connected next time so I can actually give you live update on what I'm doing and what I'm feeling. I start off by I'm moving my hips there. I'm opening my hips, left hip, right hip, making sure that I'm central in the saddle. A little bit of change of rein. Obviously, I have a contact just to change the rein, but I'm actually trying to use more of my seat than I am my hands. And I'm trying not to initially grab the contact. It's all just about seeing and checking with myself. How am I feeling? How is he feeling? How does he feel on this rein, this left rein, to when I change the rein on the right rein? And also, does that compare to me being on the ground? Like, are there any changes? Is he finding anything more difficult? All of these questions are what I'm asking before I now take up the contact and ask for a little bit more connection is one word you could use. I used to be trained by a trainer that asked me, why do we have connection? Why do we have contact? And actually, when we ask ourselves these questions, they are thought-provoking, but it does make you question and think to yourself, instead of grabbing the reins straight away, how is my body? What can I feel underneath my seat before I take up that contact? So I'm doing the same exercise, kind of weaving, doing some figures of 8, some changes of rein, checking in. Okay, what shape is he now making now that I've picked up the rein? I can feel underneath my left seat bone that there just feels a weakness. So I'm doing a little bit of halt transitions on the right rein, just trying to see if I get any reaction, or maybe if I stimulate the muscles on the outside, which is that left hind, because that's the hind I'm feeling is a little bit weaker. That was a better halt. You can see the left hind is underneath me. And then I'm changing the rein. There is obviously so much going on here, guys, and I definitely will make sure that I've got a mic in me next time so I can do this live. But when I changed the rein onto the left side, so left rein now, I was much happier behind actually, but I noticed the change in his head carriage, a little bit heavier through the left rein compared to the other rein, and he was kind of falling out of that right shoulder. So again, mimicking what I felt in hand when I did the assessment was that right shoulder left hind connection. I I'm still doing my circles. You can see I'm still doing a little bit of hold, walk transitions, checking in, right, what can I feel underneath me? Again, I always give them a little reward. I always like giving them a little scratch down the neck, just seeing what's going on with him before I pick up that trot. Now, what are we looking for in the trot? For me, I'm looking for is he off my legs? Is he responding to the aids? And again, I'm allowing him to do what he wants with his head. So if he wanted to shove his head up in the air, that would be his choice, his option. I'm more focused on the reactivity from my legs going forward. And just again, because I'm now a little bit aware of that weakness down my left seat bone, which could be also me, but also potentially him. I'm just making sure, right, what am I feeling on this left rein? Now, again, that's a much better transition. You can see he feels to me more connected, but in the upward there, about the second stride going in, he just raised his head up a little bit. So, by the way, guys, we are playing here. We're being explorative. So obviously I'm riding with no saddle, so bear with me in terms of my balance. Picking up the trot a little bit more now, some changes of rein. And I'm actually going to try the canter because I definitely want to see what this canter feels like. For me, the trot feels like it's opening up, especially through the front end. But I noticed when I did the downward transitions that he'd just collapse a little bit. And definitely more so this feeling of almost going backward when I change rein. So when I did the transitions from walk to trot on the right rein in comparison to the left rein. Interestingly though, the trot to me felt better on the right rein. So I felt like I had a little bit more push and I had a little bit more free movement through the shoulders. Again, here you can see I'm doing very similar exercises on both reins. And I am really focusing on keeping myself centered because it's not just about the horse. I've got to take responsibility. I don't know if you saw that downward transition there, but it definitely was almost like a collapse backwards. So this is exploration. There's no punishment. We're just playing. We're having some fun. Again, we stop. I reward him, release, take the pressure off, and just wait. So good to have these small moments of processing, allowing them. Right, let's see the canter. Now that's with the left rein. You can see really put his head in the air, almost went a little bit backwards. The canter is not quite 3 beat for me. Pick up the transition. That was a much better transition through his head, through his neck, but also through his back. If I'm really honest, the right canter was definitely better in the upward, but both of them felt very flat through his back. I definitely felt there was a very limited movement, and I'm going to go through this in more detail in a minute. So that was fascinating. I'm just giving you a bit of a break. The difference from the walk to the trot and the trot to the canter was marked, especially. Oh, what are you doing? Okay, especially on this rein, the right rein, and it really was then quite apparent, like it just didn't have any push and power from that left hind, and the right shoulder, or the shoulder girdle in both directions underneath where my seat is, and I'd say the mid-thoracic spine, so the mid part of the back, honestly just felt so locked. So I'm actually going to do a bit of a treatment and see if I can release that and then get back on. So I'm starting off by just doing a general palpation, feeling for any areas of tension. Really felt a little bit of dysfunction through the base of the wither. So that's what we call like the mid-thoracic spine. I'm just doing some very gentle release exercises, nothing in terms of manipulation or chiropractic. And again, I'm just actually going to look at the way the pelvic girdle is sitting, and in terms of the flexion of the left hip, the coxofemoral joint, I did do a little mobilization in that left hip just to improve the flexion, which also has a knock-on effect on the lumbar spine. I'm just letting him respond. That's what I do. It's so important to just watch and let them respond. I'm going to recheck that pelvic girdle a second after that adjustment, and then I'm going to work back along the withers, but this time on the other side. Now the wither is obviously part of the spine. It's a very lay term, but actually the amount of nerve endings running through the spinal column is very, very prominent. Working my way down the left fore, just going to do a little bit of a mobilization into that left shoulder, see if there's any restriction. Little bit of a restriction in there. I'm just holding it now, holding that release. Okay, good boy. Again, I step back, I allow him to process, give him the time. I take an extra step back there, and that's when I actually get a nice lick and chew. And sometimes, like, less is more, and sometimes we put too much pressure on. He's actually stood, if you look at him behind, a lot better, almost a lot wider with his stance. Now, is a wider stance better? Who knows? But it's just an interesting observation. Just looking at the spinal flexion, repalpating that area of the mid-thoracics, and I just can feel a little bit of restriction through that rib cage, through the muscles, the apexial muscles of the spine, of the thoracic spine. Little bit of a release. Just going to move my way now onto the right shoulder. Little bit of a mobilization, again checking the range of motion, flexion, extension, gently placing the limb down. Repalpating that spine, looking for some spinal flexion, always watching his behavior, looking at his ears, looking at his eyes, looking at his nostrils. Horses are always talking to us. Now when I repalpate, I can feel a big difference through the rib cage, but also throughout that thoracic spine. Right, we've just done the treatment. Let's get back on board and see what we feel, see if there's any difference. Starting off the process exactly the same as we did in the beginning. I am no contact, walking around, checking in. Can I feel the difference through my left seat bone and that right shoulder compared to in the beginning? I'm doing the same movement patterns in terms of walking around, long rein, changes of rein, serpentine, a little bit of figure of 8, before I then take a contact. Now, from a scientific perspective, we're not 100% accurate here because he's already warm, you could say. However, I did notice that there was some dysfunction through the body before this treatment. So after treatment already, what I like about this walk is that I'm seeing and feeling, especially now I can see the video, which is so important to actually video yourself, guys, because when you're riding, you've got so much to think about. And, when you're filming yourself, just get over the fact, like, you're not judging yourself. You're just watching, see if you can notice anything else that you maybe didn't notice when you were on board. For me, the stride of the right fore, the left fore is so much more even, and I'm really happy with what I'm feeling underneath myself. I actually felt like there was more movement underneath my seat bones, and I'm just going to give you now a bit of a update on what I felt when I got off. So I've just got off, taken off all his tack, and there definitely was a difference from the left rein to the right rein. So I felt like the upward transitions were better for sure, but I felt like about 3 or 4 strides in, I still felt there was this real just lack of strength and push. So it's like it actually goes hand in hand with that initial assessment of the right shoulder girdle and the left hind, and that's actually what you feel, especially on that right canter rein. For me, I'm going to watch back the videos as well and just see exactly what I can think, because sometimes you see so much more so when you're videoing compared to when you're also riding and have to do everything. What I'm going to do now is just see what he's like with nothing on, so no rider, no equipment, and we're just going to have some play and continue this exploration of groundwork. it's now time to do our stretches. Hope you enjoyed that session with me and Mr. Jackson. Everything in life, especially when it comes to horses, is about progress and monitoring. And a lot of us can get stuck into the what next, and focused on, oh, why are they not bending equally left to right? And I hope this video kind of showed you just to start asking questions and start that innate curiosity that you have, that we all have, but we're just a little bit sometimes afraid to ask a question because we think we might be wrong. Ask questions. It's the best thing you can do, especially if you're someone who's struggling to understand what's going on with your horse, what they're trying to tell you, despite having numerous x-rays done, you name it. The best thing to do is come back to the basics and start asking questions. Remove all the tack, start from the ground upwards, and start to eliminate variables. If you need any help, advice, comment below, and please don't forget to give me a subscribe and a follow.